Right now I'm wearing some Silent Planet merch rather than a Lions jersey, and it's because we are going to bring on the vocalist of Silent Planet, who's currently on tour in support of their newest album, SUPERBLOOM, which was my album of the year. It's an incredible album. If you are into metal, you should definitely go check it out. But Garrett is also a huge Niners fan, and so I thought, what a better excuse to bring him on this week than to come talk about, them crushing Green Bay's hopes and dreams like they have the past few postseasons, and then also look ahead to this game like clockwork. Garrett, how you doing, bud?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Of course. How has the travels been so far? Your guys' first night is tonight in Portland, right?
Tomorrow, but we are rehearsing we're at the venue currently, just getting all ready. But tomorrow night's the first night of our tour. It comes through Detroit. It goes through Texas. It goes through the places you're mentioning. I do have an issue with calling the Lions America's team because there is a team in the NFL that has so many fans that they actually outnumber their home team in half of the games this season. I was at one of them in Jacksonville where there was more. I think it was just about even Niners and Jags fans when the Niners put an abrupt stop to the Jags. At the time, the Jags were, I think, 8-3 or something, 7-3. Yeah, they had a great record, and after the Niners, they were not the same team, and that can be said of a lot of teams this year. The Eagles completely fell apart after the Niners. I don't think any team hits like the Niners hit, and I think you see that reflected in the statistics. That being said, the Lions might be the next hardest hitting team. It's going to be an amazing matchup, and I'll be honest, I think the Niners will win, but if they lost, I think I could live with it because that would mean Detroit going to the Super Bowl, and that's just, I think, a special thing for all football fans. So
yeah, well, I'm
happy to see Detroit there. Now, Green Bay, that would have just been Green Bay or the Cowboys. You never want to see those teams win ever.
No.
And
one thing's for sure, America's team is not Dallas. That's one thing that's for sure.
No. Yeah, that's the Life Alert team. They just choke on they're chokers. And yeah, I mean, as a Niners fan, we hate the Cowboys and the Packers because Brett Favre sent us packing pretty much every year in the 90s. And before that, it was the Cowboys in the early 90s and the 80s. And so
you've had the opposite effect the past few years. It seems like it's automatic now that the Niners are making it to this NFC Championship game, usually besting and crushing the hopes and dreams of either Green Bay or Cowboys the past few years.
I will say Green Bay was the better team the other night. Green Bay outplayed the Niners for the most part, and the Niners really got lucky getting that win. I think it's kind of not a bad thing though, because a win like that makes everybody. They kind of in the film room, it's going to be a loss, So they're going to be really hyped up. I think they were kind of rusty, and obviously losing Deebo Samuel in the first quarter is never what you want to see.
There was a lot
that happens. He does get hurt, so you can't say it's not luck. It's bad luck because he does get hurt. But yeah,
there was a lot of criticism on Brock Purdy too, right? Like I think a lot of people kind of went from the game manager conversations got super loud. What are your feelings on him as the 49ers quarterback? Because obviously there's drama there with Trey Lance, Jimmy G. You've had a lot of different faces. Does Brock Purdy feel like the guy to you to actually kind of manage like all the talent around him in this offense?
Absolutely. He gets the ball out on time and he's accurate. And in Shanahan's West Coast system, that's 90% of what you need. Not to mention he's shifty. He's not the fastest guy, but he avoids sacks very well. He's not Jimmy G. Jimmy G was kind of feet planted.
Statue.
And statue. I do think Brock Purdy's the guy. That being said, he really struggles in the rain. And I believe this game comes down to if it rains or not. If it rains, I think the Lions win. And if it doesn't rain, I think the Niners win. Obviously, there's a million factors, but that's where I'm going to put it because I think it's hand size. Like, he really struggles to throw in the rain. Like, if you saw that Ravens game, and actually there was a play. Did you see this against the Packers? He dropped back, and literally mid drop back, he wiped his hand and got the ball and threw it again. And he's really uncomfortable in the rain. I don't know that it's hand size. I've never measured the dude's hands, but I know that that's often a
He
factor
did measure small
in the
hands
rain.
at the combine.
Did he? Yeah.
He did.
And because I know there's having an extra, inch or half an inch, I think makes a big difference when it comes to gripping the ball and feeling confident about it.
Especially when it's slick. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think it's tricky because I know he had the glove and he didn't like it. I think he's going to have to start learning how to throw with the glove. Because I just think his bare hands don't really work well with throwing the football. And it's unfortunate because it leads to a lot of criticism that is somewhat out of his control. People are like, oh, throwing picks, he got flustered. It's like, no, I think dude is like struggling to hold the ball physically, Yeah.
Is there any concern? I mean, the Packers, obviously a different team than Detroit, a younger team, a team that just kind of randomly got hot. Jordan Love, a very different quarterback than Goff. But a lot of the things that the Packers did to expose the Niners on both offense and defense, the Lions also have strengths in those categories. Like, for example, running the ball. Like Detroit is one of the best running teams. Stopping the run. Detroit's one of the better run-stop teams. So it's going to put pressure on Purdy, and it should put pressure on the Niners defense. Does that concern you at all, seeing those comparisons?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I will say, though, that Green Bay's running game, I think, in the last few games has been the best in the NFL. Like, I mean, it's incredible. Did you see that? That was the first game in, I believe, 52 games the Niners have given up over 100 rushing yards, which is a crazy streak. It's a 3-season streak. They have not given up 100 rushing yards. I mean, is it Aaron Jones, I think?
Aaron Jones, yeah.
Yeah, he was just coming. He was like a freaking cannonball coming out of there, and I think that mixed with the rain, making it hard to catch him when he shifted, and I think also just having they kind of had 2 weeks off. Some of those guys, I think they were a little rusty. So I do think the Niners will do better at stopping the run. It's still a tough run game to stop, though. But I do think I feel like the Niners would be in a bit of a better place. I think when I think about how they got lucky in winning that last game, I think it's going to show up probably number one as far as I think the defense with tackling, as well as I think our defense gave up some big pass plays because of the rain. And I know both teams play with rain. I just think you do get a little spoiled when you're in San Francisco. You don't have as many elements constantly as you do if you're like playing Lambeau Field. So I'm curious to see where that goes. Detroit's used to playing in a dome. Is that right?
That is true, yeah. But we do play the NFC North, which is Chicago and Lambeau twice a year.
Yeah.
I think weather's supposed to be decent for the game. One thing that I think is a really critical matchup, honestly, is Brandon Ayuk. And I've been saying this dude's name for 3 years, but this year he is totally broken out, and I think has come on as a solidified wide receiver one for the Niners.
Yeah.
And the Lions tend to struggle with whoever the main wide receiver is for the other team, because our coverage isn't super great. We've struggled with our cornerbacks. Do you think he's kind of like, a pretty critical matchup in that situation? And then on top of that, like, let's say there are elements, right? Like, do you trust Purdy to actually be able to kind of make some of those huge completions? Because like I do. Beat over the top and stuff like that.
Yeah, I have that faith if weather permits, it's not raining. I do think he'll make some great throws. I think Jared Goff's playing really well right now, and you have to get pressure on him. And our D line was really suspect against the Packers, which is just crazy. I don't understand that when you have Hargrave and you have Bosa on one side and Chase Young on the other side. I don't know how you're not getting in the face every time. I know they were rushing for a lot of it, and I think ever since the Niners lost Hufanga, they don't do as many of those safety blitzes. Because I think they've lost that with Hufanga. However, I do think their secondary coverage has improved a lot over the course of the year. So, I think it'll be vital that, the Niners are able to pressure Goff. Because if you give Goff time, he's a pro. He'll pick you apart,
Yeah, I think the Lions having one of the better offensive lines too,
Exactly. Yeah. I think a good thing to note too is, you mentioned the 49ers coverage, right? They're one of the better cover teams on the back end in the NFL for sure. And it helps that they're able to normally get pass rush. But when they saw Green Bay's offensive line, who was playing like one of the top offensive lines, like you said, they did struggle to get pressure on Jordan Love. The Lions' offensive line, although it is kind of beat up with Jackson probably out and Ragnow banged up, but still one of the better offensive lines. It'll be interesting to see. Because I think that, Ward, I think, is one of the best corners in football. Every time I watch that guy play, he impresses me. But like you said, with Tufunga out, and then the safety play for San Fran has been questionable, and that's where Amon-Ra is going to be most of the time, is slot lined up on a safety. So I think Amon-Ra could have a very favorable matchup most of the game. And, I think, especially when you get down to these championship weekend games, like, it's, matchups are where you got to look at, consistently they're going to attack those guys. I don't know. I think it should be a great game. I think 7 points is a pretty heavy spread there. I mean, do you think that they're worth the sevens fair? Or do you think it should be higher or lower?
I don't think I should be lower. It should be closer.
It's surprising to see it because I think it opened at 6.5 and it's already moved.
Yeah, no, I think you're seeing a lot of bias there, especially just like I do think the Niners will play better, but you kind of got to judge a team by their previous game, and they were definitely the worst. They looked like the worst team to win in the divisional round of the. I'm willing to admit that.
I'd have to agree to that. Yeah.
So that's pretty shocking to me. I actually didn't know that. If you would have asked me, I would have guessed it was 3 or 4. So
yeah, it's definitely interesting, and I get it. I mean, big home field advantage and all that. I think like one last question I have, and I do kind of want to talk about the success SUPERBLOOM has had and things like that. If you want to chat music, a little bit. But as far as the Niners go, right? The NFC North Championship has been both this almost seemingly automatic game that the Niners seem to get to under Shanahan, and also like this wall that they just cannot get over, where they have ran into these struggles. Eagles game was really rough the 1 year.
Yeah,
like how
didn't have a quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. Like really unlucky. What do you feel like the Niners need to do to finally get over that hump in this game? Is there anything?
Christian McCaffrey. They need to establish the run game. They need to trust that Christian McCaffrey, and if Debo's healthy, just keep it. Let Brock Purdy start throwing as he warms up and feels comfortable. You can't hang the game on Brock Purdy. He's just not that guy. He's a great QB1 for us, but I think they need to establish the run, and they need to do some creative Shanahan stuff. I think on defense too, it's I think they have a bit of it, maybe an advantage, having Shanahan knowing Goff so well and having played against Goff so well on the Rams. And really dominating the Rams, I feel like that could work in our favor. On the flip side, though, the Niners again. I mean, they cannot play like they did last week against Green Bay. That won't work. Mm-hmm. So, it's going to be a good game. I'll be honest. I don't even have to watch the Baltimore Chiefs game. The Ravens are going to smack them. The Chiefs are not.
I agree.
This is not the Chiefs team. Like I think they've already outperformed themselves getting to the AFC. But I mean the Ravens are the best team in football, and I don't think you can argue that right now. The best team doesn't always win, but I do think they're the best team in football right now. I think they've earned that, and I think the Ravens are going to smack the Chiefs. However, I think this Lions-Niners game is going to be the one to watch. It's going to be fun, and like any football game, probably come down to turnovers, but it's going to be a fun one to watch.
Yeah, Mark and I have been hotly debating KC and the Ravens really the entire year. I think Mark.
You think KC's going to go?
I said about 8 weeks ago that Kansas City was going to represent the AFC when everybody counted them out, and John said that the Ravens would. I don't know if you called the Ravens Super Bowl in our preview episode, but you definitely said that they were legitimate.
I said they were going to win a very hard division, and they were going to look the best they ever have, because they solved. I mean, they've been struggling with just having Lamar click with their offensive scheme and their receivers the past 3 years. They finally fixed that, and they just look unbeatable now because of that. So that was my whole thesis, and I mean, but Mark's right with KC,
I just think Mahomes is Thanos. I just think he's inevitable. Like it's just like, just when you think that the Ravens are the best team and everything points to them dominating a Chiefs team that's like doesn't really feel like they should be there, Mahomes does what Mahomes does, and that's
I hope
goes to a Super Bowl.
I hope so, because here's a guarantee: if the Niners meet the Chiefs again in the Super Bowl, they will smack them. Now, if the Niners meet the Ravens in the Super Bowl, God help us. You know, and of course we got to beat the Lions first, and I'm not counting them out, of course, but just saying if, you know.
Yeah, but no, I mean, the Ravens are the only team this entire season that has really embarrassed both the Lions and the Niners. I mean, I think both teams look good in every game they played, just win or lose, and the Ravens look dominant. So, Mark, I apologize, but I do have to pivot real quick to SUPERBLOOM. And the reason why is because I've had the privilege to speak to all three of your bandmates about kind of putting the record together and the process and the style change. And I do have a couple questions just for you in specific. Like, you know, Silent Planet had a pretty big genre evolution with this record, both instrumentally and lyrically. What kind of brought that on, and like what kind of sources of inspiration did you lean into in order to, you know, maybe find that new lyrical approach, that new, you know, singing approach, some of those things that are totally new to Silent Planet on this album, at least, you know, outside looking in the creative process.
I mean, I guess starting with like big picture conceptually, and it's kind of a link to this discussion about the Niners, because it's inspired by NorCal, actually north of the Bay Area, up in like Humboldt County, but just a very mystical place, the Lost Coast, something that most people never really get to see in their lifetime, but I encourage everyone to see it. It's just kind of its own thing. It's a forest right on the Pacific Ocean with crazy rock formations and some of the oldest trees on the earth, and just a beautiful place that has a lot of paranormal events throughout history and a lot of interesting lore behind it. I think as far as the musical shifts, I think we started listening to a lot of different experimental stuff. I think there's other heavy bands that even did it before us. I can think of like the band From Joy, bands who really were mixing in like drum and bass with metal, you know, and just a lot of different, so us just like, you know, kind of taking a note and be like, yeah, let's mix in some of our kind of non-metal influences. The band Health, for sure. Just it's fun to kind of play with industrial samples with metal. And I think as far as singing goes, I've always wanted to know how to sing, and it's thanks to my vocal teacher, Melissa Cross. I started learning how to sing, and for a long time I was self-conscious about it because I grew up in like a very sports environment, and my dream was to play basketball for the Lakers my whole life. So all I ever did was just practice basketball, play basketball. That was my whole life. And then so I started very, very late in music, you know, in adulthood, and I was I never thought I'd be able to sing because I wasn't like a choir kid growing up. I wasn't raised around it, and my teacher helped me to find my voice, and my friend Rory, the singer of Dayseeker, was actually the one who told me, he's like, you don't have to have like the best voice, you just have an interesting voice, and he's like, you have kind of a weird voice, so like use it, you know, to like lean into it. And it is true. People always say I sound like a surfer stoner or something, and it's like a low voice with a lot of croaking in it, sort of. And so learning how to like sing and kind of create like a character within my voice was a really fun process. And our producer Dan Bronstein did an amazing job, and our Buster Odeholm mixed the record and made it sound like a car's crashing every time the guitar strings are hit. So it made it just sound over the top heavy, and it's just fun. It's cool to work with so many talented people, and you know, like anyone in a sports interview says after every game, it's a team effort, because it is. It's like there's so many brains that go into the process, and it's cool to share it.
Yeah, Antimatter, definitely which I know that song is about that insane van crash that you guys were through anyways. But that first, you talk about guitar string sounding like a car crash. I mean, that first drop that hits in that song, that's exactly what I thought of. And I'm a huge Viljarta fan. So to hear
I love Viljarta.
His creative input on your guys' music, to me, like, was the best thing ever. Like it was like listening to my two favorite bands collaborate with one another. So
oh man, that's
absolutely
awesome.
loved the record. Super excited
to
see you guys when you come through Texas. And again, by the time this episode's out, it will just be their first night of tour. So definitely go make sure to check out the date, see if they're coming to a town near you.
Come hang out. Yeah, if the Niners lose, make fun of me, and if the Niners win, you owe me $5.
And talk shit about the Cowboys regardless, because
yeah, that's right.
Anyways.
We're all no. I find it, unless if someone's a Cowboys fan, I can like find a commonality in hating the Cowboys with them. And I mean, for the Lions, I'm excited for them. I watched that Barry Sanders documentary the other day, and that was fun because, you know, I've always felt, I think anyone who grew up in Barry Sanders era felt like, I mean, there's just I think he's the GOAT of football, like personally, because I don't really as much measure it on like how many Super Bowls did you win, because and I'm not saying you shouldn't, but just personally, I'm like, if I had to start from scratch, who's my first pick? I'd take Barry Sanders. You can't tackle him. Like he was like a human cheat code. And imagining if he would have been like, imagine Barry Sanders on this Lions team, or imagine Barry Sanders on this Niners team. Like, dude's winning a bunch of Super Bowls, you know?
Yeah, he was special. And honestly, like, even though they play different positions, I've said this a few times, Debo, the way he runs reminds me of Barry.
Yeah.
Like it's like I get like flashbacks to the highlight videos that I grew up watching, because he's so elusive. He feels like he's impossible to tackle. He's always taking the right angle. I love watching Debo Samuel play.
He's like Barry on like human growth hormone. Such a strong person. Like, I can't tell you how many times you're watching Niner games and the guy who tackles Debo gets hurt. Yeah. Just because, like, dude is a freak of nature. But on the flip side, you know, it's hard to stay healthy. And I think sometimes it's just because he's so hard to take down. He takes like 5 times more hits.
He fights for every yard. Yeah.
He fights for every yard.
To his own detriment at times, potentially. Yeah. Thanks a ton for coming on, Garrett. This was a ton of fun. Do you have a score prediction going into this game for Lions Niners? And then we'll let you go here.
Oh, man. Yeah. I'm going to go with Niners 30, Lions 28.
I like it. Thanks a ton for coming on, Garrett. Safe travels for your tour. Thanks, and good luck tomorrow.
Hey, appreciate y'all. And win or lose, I am very happy for the Lions, truly. If the Lions go to the Super Bowl, I'll be rooting for them. Like, I've been saying all year, I'm like, I'm happy, I'm stoked about the Lions, truly. So, you know, for all those people, you know, that are like plotting my demise because of my predictions, just know, hey, you know, I'm with you. Lions are great. Just got to rep my team.
Hey, I've always had a ton of respect for the Niners. They're one of my favorite teams to watch, not named the Lions. So, you know, this might be the first time in a long time I'm actively rooting against the Niners, because I think they're mutual.
No, same. Awesome. I've always been rooting for the Lions, man. Dan Campbell's very inspirational. So we'll see what happens. But thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Garrett. Talk to you later, man.
Y'all.
Peace.
Bye.
Dude, it's awesome because like Garrett always has caught me by surprise, because I've had a couple sports conversations with him. There's one Silent Planet show that I watched where I had a Saints hat on, and like he said, he grew up playing basketball, and so like it's hilarious because like, you know, he's musician metalcore guy that I've known for this long time, and then he'll like fire off like a super like niche like sports take on Twitter that maybe me and 3 other people out of his thousands of followers actually understand. And I'm like, I really appreciate that. Like he said on Twitter, like, happy inaugural Cowboys choking the playoffs day for all that celebrate. It's just like, it's freaking awesome. And yeah, it's like, you know, I love like bridging that gap, because there's so many music fans out there that are super passionate about sports and don't have an opportunity to talk about it. So again, that was Garrett Russell of Silent Planet. Their album SUPERBLOOM came out late last year. It is phenomenal. They are on tour right now. So if you're into metal music, make sure to go check them out.
Yeah, that was an awesome. That was awesome, dude. A lot of time people don't realize that everybody loves sports. Like, if you don't like sports, you're a very, 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 very small minority. Like, it's just, especially football in this country. Like, everybody cares about it at least a little bit, and most people care, especially about their team, a lot.
It's a cultural epicenter of the United States. I've made this argument before that like COVID was just bearable enough during football season that it like kept us from like going into a civil war. Like, I swear to God, like that was the thing that everybody was like using to you know, like stay mentally sane while being cooped up for that entire year. And honestly, you look at what the city of Detroit is doing right now with
dude, like football can transform a state in the city.
It looks like a totally different city right now. The way people are treating one another and just like all the camaraderie that goes with it. Like, it is a special sport.